Go live. Oh, look, you still have my graphic up? I think I did okay.
Yeah, I see it. Yeah, and I'll take a look on your Facebook and LinkedIn.
Yeah, so we're rolling right along. I mean, look at this, December 14th, the top of the hour. Hey, you're on Lunch Conversations with Randy and Teddy. And those who do not know, I'm Randy. And those who do not know, the dude in the blue shirt is Randy, and our special guest today is Robert Katz. And we'll tell you more about this guy here in a few minutes. But before we do that, let's go ahead and thank our sponsor. Lunch Conversations with Randy and Teddy is sponsored in part by the Elder Law Firm throughout 2022. We're grateful for their support. The Elder Law Firm can help you keep your commitments with your loved ones, those who you want to help with estate planning, elder care planning. And you've heard me say this numerous times. Those who need those 7 documents created or updated so that they appropriately represent their wishes. So reach out to the Elder Law Firm in Greensboro, North Carolina, 336-396-4551. And remind them that Randy Wooden told you to give them a call. Boom. Randy, I think I did it right, man.
Well, I think so. I tell you what. We are on, we're doing it on Facebook, but I don't see that it is sharing yet.
Well, I'll introduce myself and I'll go figure out what's going on Facebook. So for those who've never met me, again, my business is all about teaching LinkedIn as a business tool. We do one-on-one coaching. We do corporate training. We have a Teachable Academy. So if you know anybody that needs help with LinkedIn as a business tool, tell them to look up Teddy Burris. And Randy, you go ahead and introduce yourself, and I'll figure out what's going on with the Restream.
Happy to do it. Looking forward to having Robert on here, learning some cool stuff. But before we get into that, a little bit about me. Many of you know I work for Goodwill Industries, Northwest North Carolina. Randy Wooden. I'm the director for our professional center. You may not know that Goodwill has a professional center, but we do, and we're happy to help you. If this time of year is a little slow for you, maybe, okay, first of the year, I get that, but we'll get you on the calendar. If you are a job hunter and for whatever reason feel like you may need a little assistance, our services are free. I have clients across the country, and we're happy to help you. It's all free. Just reach out to me, we'll get you on the calendar, and hopefully 2023 will be a better year for you job-wise. So having said all that, Teddy, did I stall long enough?
Well, it's not me. It's not me or you, Randy. It's Restream. I had this problem yesterday with another live that was hiccuping with live to face LinkedIn. But let's just keep going. We don't need to hold up our special guest or our audience for technology.
And just a quick thought, if you have comments or questions for our guests today, I'll be monitoring the chat box, so keep an eye on that. But yeah, put them in the chat. We'll try to work them in where appropriate. And
only the easy questions.
Only take the easy ones.
And no softball questions either. Make them easy, but no softball stuff. So.
Oh, by the way, it's working now, Teddy.
I fixed it. I just had to show up. I fixed it.
Okay. Well, I appreciate doing that. That's awesome, man.
Yeah. You know, there's a lot of people that Randy and I have met over we're on show 140 something, Randy.
Wow, that's amazing.
Yeah.
God bless.
We meet a lot of really cool people, but we have never until today had
anybody as handsome as me.
I forgot, Robert. I'm sorry. Okay. I'm sorry. Yeah, I'm supposed to say this is the compensation level that I had committed to. That Robert by far is one of, if not the most handsome Robert Katz we've ever had on the show. But he's also the very first real life human rocket scientist that's been on the show. Do you know that was coming, Randy?
A regular rocket scientist, huh? All right. Yeah. or in a brain surgeon in your part-time.
Well, he's also a fitness freak.
Yep. Saw that.
And some of Robert's claim to fame, as I try to share with you who he is he's been building robots and rockets since first grade.
That's cool. Yeah. Good stuff.
And he's got, a bunch of stuff that's helped him. He's got an undergraduate degree in physics, mathematics, computer science, and chemistry. And he wrote his doctoral thesis in the late 1980s. I don't know what
no specific dates, right?
On artificial intelligence. 1980s, he wrote a doctoral thesis about artificial intelligence. So when I was Googling really smart people, rocket scientists who know a little bit about artificial intelligence, lo and behold, there was this beautiful picture. Did I say that right, Robert?
Yep. Handsome, beautiful. Yep.
Excuse me, handsome. But Robert, would you introduce yourself a little bit better to our audience, please?
Yeah, I don't know if I can top that. I think that is the crux of it.
There's one piece we don't want to talk about yet.
Firefighter-paramedic?
Or Herbie the Love Bug.
Oh, yeah, we'll keep that. Yeah.
Keep that.
So I have been blessed to be applying my degrees and my passions within the space program professionally since my freshman year of college, when I had my first internship working on the Hubble Space Telescope at the National Bureau of Standards for a contract through Johns Hopkins University Applied Physics Laboratory for Goddard, the Goddard Space Flight Center. So my space career essentially launched there my freshman year. I was amazingly blessed. And I developed a passion for space, as we all did, by watching the men land on the moon as a little kid. I mean, that's my only memories, my only good memories of being a little kid is following that and just being captivated, of course, as the whole country was. And that just motivated me. You know, I knew I wanted to contribute and be part of that. Be part of that excitement, and it drove amazing technologies, some of which we'll talk about, beyond just Tang, of course, Tang being the most and space ice cream. So that launched my space career, and I was been really just blessed to be able to serve my country in so many space-related ways: communications, surveillance, protection, exploration of planets all over all over our solar system and beyond, and most importantly, Earth. I mean, people don't realize how much of the space research actually informs our knowledge of Earth. And so I've really been blessed to be working throughout all of that.
And for
you know, Teddy, I usually ask the why question, but I think we just got that covered. So I think we're good there. This is going to be great because you've got a lot of intel to share here. So I don't want to talk anymore. Teddy, I'll turn it to you. But if you have comments, questions for Robert, put them in the chat. I'll keep an eye on that for it.
And for those who don't know, the National Bureau of Standards is now referred to as the National Institute of Science and Technology.
Absolutely. Yes. Yep.
And it's in Gaithersburg, Maryland, off of, I can't remember the name of the road, Clarksburg Road and another road. And I know that because that's my old stomping grounds. I used to chase women back in the days back around there.
I think I saw you when I was there. We talked about you a lot. We said, wow, wish we could be that guy.
In a good way.
A good way. We were jealous.
Always a good way.
All these beautiful women you were after. Yeah.
So we want to talk about artificial intelligence. And remember, the Herbie the Love Bug. We'll get to that later on. Robert had nothing to do with that, but he may have had something to do with another form of that autonomous vehicle. We'll talk about that a little bit. But Robert, in this whole AI thing is exploding. I mean, I don't know what's fueling it. Maybe it's just lazy people who don't want to work, or maybe it's smart people who want to work smarter. But talk a little bit about, what do you call AI? What is AI to you?
So that's a good question, because it is different things to different people. Essentially, if you look at the navigation system, like when you type in an address and it tells you where to go, it's using AI, and back in the server when it's gathering your information, it's looking and using AI to say, okay, try to predict, because time we try to look at the past and predict the future, we're using models involving AI. We're building an AI model on what's the best route. And actually in operations research and routing have been one of the hardest problems, one of the quintessential problems for math and engineers and science. Certainly in the space program was, how do we get from point A to point B? So using, gathering all these many data points, I mean, it's perfect for AI because you have data points of all the people on the road, on that current road that currently, all the people that are about to be on that road as it's tracking anonymized locations from all the phones, not just yours, but also historically for that location at that same time of day, at that same day of the week, with the same meteorological weather conditions. So it's looking at all these factors and choosing the best route for you. So it's essentially using your AI. I mean, some people would want to say, well, that's your second brain. We'll actually get to that. So AI is as simple as that, or as sophisticated as what we now have chatbots that you can carry on conversations with. You can ask for an explanation, or you can have Alexa when you have a question, and she can look at data and then assimilate, not just regurgitate, but assimilate a answer. And now we have, although we've had this drive to have all of this, now we have the benefit of putting this drive into reality, which we didn't have back necessarily when I was working on it back in the 80s, hypothetically in the 80s. Won't say it's that far back. But now we have this convergence, what I call hyperconvergence of all of these technologies. We have the acceleration, miniaturization of hardware, of software. We have sensors. We have communication technologies, even faster, that allow the seamless communication between multiple data points and servers to do the hard crunching. So this hyperconvergence is what's bringing us to this point in time now to allow this hyper drive and hyper acceleration in the ability for AI to provide service to humanity.
Yeah. So, go ahead, buddy.
I was wondering, you defined AI, and I'm wondering how, in your view, if you want to define things, how does that differ from something called machine learning?
Yeah,
and I think about, for example, Waze, W-A-Z-E, the phone app. That's a real-time, updated, based on user input, versus, let's say, Google Maps, which correlates with things that have happened in the past and can track, I guess, the phone usage. So how do those two things differ, or are they the same thing?
We're the same thing now. So my friends in Israel that built Waze sold Waze to Google Maps, but sold to Google, so there's pieces of the technology incorporated in Google Maps. They kept Waze as a separate product because it has such a following, but the data that is fed into Waze also benefits the algorithm in Google Maps. So people retain the interface. I mean, just today on the way over, as I was going 100 miles an hour, I was notified that there was a speed trap there, and it was because somebody punched in Waze to tell it, but I saw them in Google Maps. So on the back end, they're connected. On the front end, they have different loyal followers, so they keep theirs and maintain theirs, but they have the same AI technology. So it uses a combination. So this is a really good example of something we are going to talk about, is how do humans interface with this AI technology, and how do we contribute? And it's by writing data to help improve, and how it's helping us in our life, and how we work together. And that's a good example. But they are sort of one and the same in the back end. The front end, they're a little bit different. And they are, in both cases, a good example of core AI working to bring all those data points together.
Yeah. You just said that, Robert. How do we as humans interface with AI? And there's two big pieces of that. One is let me see if I can say it right. One is the conscious decision to engage with an application or a device, and engage with some artificial intelligence, system or application. But then there's also the non-conscious or unconscious activity that just by picking up the device, literally just by picking up the device, I just interface with AI because or unlock it. I just interface with AI, and now something knows that I'm doing something with the device. I wonder, I don't want to get into a deep philosophical conversation, but I mean, just literally walking down the street and having a camera pick us up, we interface with artificial intelligence.
Right. Yeah, we're interfacing with it all the time, increasingly, and there are privacy limits in the United States. There are laws that allow only so much information to be shared.
Right.
Now, you mentioned walking down the street, so it has been, our laws have said, well, there's no expectation of privacy when you're walking down the street, but what you do in your private home, and then still how that data is used, does have some protections in the United States, very light.
Yeah.
It's very light. In Europe, GDPR, it's much heavier. And then in other countries, such as China, which we'll talk about, there's zero.
Yeah.
And so we're interfacing with it all the time. So it's, as we said, even like when we do financial transactions, I mean, there's AI decision systems that look at, say, oh, well, Robert usually, there's some obvious things where, okay, you're in this city, but there's a charge in this city. I mean, that's easy. You don't need AI for that. But, if I was to suddenly, let's say, buy a red tie one day, they go, wait a minute, Robert is a yellow guy. I mean, he likes yellow. That's his logo. That's his signature colors. Why was he buying a red tie? That's strange. It must, obviously somebody hacked in and pretending to be Robert. So that would flag the AI. It's developing sort of an avatar. I mean, people would go so far as to say a digital twin of you living. It's not quite there yet, but that's what people are looking at, potentially to be an avatar somewhat of people. But you're interacting with it all the time. Some of the autonomous vehicles and may have learnings that they learn on how you would typically react in certain subjective circumstances, and they would then learn that and react appropriately as you.
Yeah, it's a double-edged sword. We want it
as all technology is.
Yeah, absolutely.
I mean, the printing press, people thought the world would end because of the printing press, and we can't. That much information in people's hands was dangerous, and they thought that world would end. And though it almost did, as you could see, it changed. That people got enlightened, people got smart, and we had this education. And from that, we had generations bring innovation and making contributions, and the world got so much better. The internet itself was a lot of the commerce was driven by nefarious things, which I won't even talk about. But now the commerce, though, that happens on the internet benefits everybody. Yeah. On the internet, but a lot of it was driven.
Yeah, that's funny, Robert. One of the maybe not even one, but the very first thing I bought on the internet. Now, Randy, you're going to get a kick out of this.
All right. Was
a training bra.
You bought a training bra.
I did, man. I did. One of my daughters wanted this. My wife took her to JCPenney's. They found this bra, but they didn't have it in stock. But the lady at the counter, this is back in the early 90s, and she came home and she's all sad. I didn't have it. I want it, and it's online, but I don't know how to do it. I'm the computer guy. Okay, I can order that for you. So I went to jcpenney's.com. And I found the one with her guidance that she wanted. And she's so excited. She saw a picture of it there. And I got my wife's credit card, probably a JCPenney's credit card. I created an account on JCPenney's and I ordered that bra. Now, Robert, I share that story to go, if I were to do that today, can you imagine the number of training bra ads that would be all over the internet every time I look at a browser?
Wow.
Oh,
they're keeping their eye on you, Teddy.
Yeah. So, but my point is that it's a double-edged sword. We want it, we need it, but sometimes we hate it, and we just got to accept it.
Yeah, and we do over time get used to some of these. So you mentioned Herbie the Love Bug, autonomous vehicles. So as you probably know, the autonomous vehicles have the ability to be a lot smarter than they are. They aren't because people would freak out. Like people right now, with some people say, I never will get an autonomous vehicle, but they'll get in an airplane that.
Careful, Robert. Careful, you're gonna freak people out, dude.
I will. So do you gentlemen want to guess? If I flew from New York to California.
Let's ask the audience. Ask the audience, Robert.
Okay. So if I was asked the audience, if I from New York to California, and we have these amazing, brilliant, smart pilots. I actually flew recently on amazing Delta flight where it was a mom and her daughter, where her daughter was she was the captain. You probably saw that I posted that. And so, but amazingly smart, well-trained. They typically go to Embry-Riddle, which is one of my favorite colleges. Some of my smartest interns go to Embry-Riddle. How long in that entire trip from gate to gate is there actually that one of those brilliant pilots on the stick? How long?
Randy, do you have a guess?
I don't know. And the landing and takeoff. So I'll guess 5 minutes.
And Dale's guessed 4 minutes.
So Dale is closer because it's about 3.5, and it's getting even less because the landings are becoming completely automated. Thanks to some technology that I'm proud to say I worked on in about '94. I started working on what we call differential GPS, and we did testing to get the granularity down that low, to be able to have them land. Yeah, so it's about 3 minutes, 3.5 minutes. It's getting even less of the entire flight, and the rest is be done autonomous and through our AI is helping with that, looking at different weather and looking at other airplanes and autonomous and the routing, as we talked about, is one of the hardest problems because there's so many possibilities. And it's it's the people know that, like they may freak out, so they don't want people necessarily to know that. But you think about they're still not necessarily comfortable about their car. So adoption of these technologies is very, very important. So many of these are sort of brought in gently. We may just call them automation instead of AI. So people are a lot more comfortable with some of these technologies.
Go ahead, Randy.
Well, and I think the differentiation from a layman's standpoint is, okay, if you're flying an airplane, I mean, it's not like you're got some guy checking his phone, 15 feet behind you going like this and going to rear end you. And there are other cars on the road is my point. And there's traffic and there's and the whole thing about people hacking into the system and just that scary part versus an airplane. There's a lot of space out there. So that would be my pushback as a layman going, hey, it's a different animal. We're talking car versus airplane.
But a plane, like if you think about the sensors that we have on the cars, you only have 2 eyes, although you have 2, they only can look in one direction at the same time, where as the car is getting an entire view of the whole time, and they're also talking to each other.
You didn't know that was coming, did you, Randy?
Yeah.
My car, what's my car talking? I don't speak car. What's it talking to? Other cars?
The other cars, right?
And they're talking about the football game.
Right.
But the other cars aren't AI. So that's, I guess, until it's adopted universally, does that?
Right. So so it will take time for all of them to have the technology, but there are protocols to allow them to talk to each other, and then that data would feed into the AI to then figure out the best routing and the best sequence for each individual car within that group. So you can imagine how things could progress when you have, instead of the first car moving and the next car after that, but you'll eventually have where the light turns green and they just all go at the same time, because they'll all be communicating as a group. That's what's coming.
It's coming.
And they're usually talking about you. They're usually saying, "Oh my gosh, Randy
wore that shirt. Oh my gosh,
shirt." And the last show, did you hear the last show? Like he had a guest, and that guest wasn't as handsome as Robert. He should get Robert Katz on the next show. Like that's what they're saying.
And because they're chit-chatting about idle conversation, that's when it all fails, Randy.
I still have the override, though. I assume. I mean, I still have a gas pedal and a brake and a steering wheel.
Only if the car wants you to.
I mean, do they trust me?
All right, so let's stay on track, because we don't want to go too deep into the the murkiness of my mind. But Robert, there was back to the less than 4 minutes, the pilot's controlling the plane.
Yeah.
Then there was this recently where a pilot got ill and may have died, and the co-pilot called for help. And then now that just exploded the whole story about, the automation in airplanes. And because there was also a conversation about, instead of having 2 pilots, dropping down to only 1.
Absolutely. I was gonna, you said don't scare people, so I didn't go there. But they would already be there if the pilots,
union,
and yeah, wouldn't. And I'm not taking a position either way. But they're
going to experiment with what's it called? They're going to experiment with freight airplanes that only have freight, so your Christmas package won't care there's only 1 pilot. So, but again, we need it, we want it, we're scared of it.
Yeah, I mean, one of the best lines, and if you look, you can learn a lot from movies. Art, life imitates art. Art is usually ahead, and is unfortunately usually right. But there was an amazing scene when Will Smith got a ticket in one of his movies. He said, "You got a ticket. You were driving the car yourself, like by humans. Like, oh my gosh, like how could you? Like, we will look back and we'll go, oh, like you entrusted a human to fly that airplane, that complicated airplane, and you trusted a faulty human to do that." We're gonna look back and we're gonna say, just like we look back now when we think about when we x-rayed kids' feet to see if the shoe fit. There was an x-ray, a fluoroscope, a live fluoroscope in the shoe department at JCPenney or Sears, that you would check the kids' feet, or we would give leeches, or we would not wear a helmet. Heaven forbid, we would, now Child Protective Services will pick you up if you have your kid on a bike without a helmet. We look back at some of the great things we did now, we think it's crazy. We're gonna look back at similarly and say, you drove a car by yourself as a human? Are you kidding? Yeah, our brains have to wrap our head, our lizard brains try to wrap our head around these advancing technologies, really, as you point out, the adoption struggle.
So if I can hang around long enough, I can tell my great grandkids that I drove a car.
Yep, absolutely. And they won't believe you. They'll think you're kidding. Grams, what are you talking about?
Yeah, you also use the payphone too. I mean, think about how many payphones you see these days. A lot of stuff changes.
So this we got 2 minutes. Randy, pick up if you got any questions in chat you want to bring up.
Oh, just Todd had a question about inhibitors to AI today. What are AI companies trying to solve today? What are some things they're working on?
Oh, so those are great questions. So as we talked about a little bit with the driving example, lots and lots of data points, but they come down to a single decision. Where do you go? Like, what is my best route to go with all these data points? I mean, those are things that are really hard for humans to do because it's so much in real time, and you have to look at the history predictively. So some of the biggest similar challenges are medical challenges. So if you think about, a doctor, you go in and, the more you know about the human body, the more you realize you don't know, and how complex this miraculous machine works and all of the various chemical processes, and it's mind-boggling. So when you think about being able to take and consume every article ever written about a single symptom in the history of science in every language, and being able to assimilate all of that data plus all of your particular personalized data, all of the blood results, all of your test results that you've ever had since you were born, consume that, and then similarly maybe even of your relatives, of course, subject to privacy laws and all of that, and then being able to then make a decision, like a single decision. What's your best course of action on this particular disease? What's the underlying cause? What's the symptomology of that? So medical decisions are one of the most important because it's the area that we need the most help in terms of our medical system, rather than just looking at symptoms and putting our holes in the diet. We really want to get to the more looking at the body as holistically, hence the word whole, as we don't do right now. We partition it, unfortunately, because of its complexity and for other reasons, into various systems, and that's very artificial. The body wasn't designed with the respiratory system, the digestive system. It was made to work as a whole. We don't do it that way. So the medical assisting in medical decisions is one of the biggest, most important areas that AI is going to help, and is helping.
Yeah. I mean, I think that AI can help me with, relationship issues, but that's a conversation for another day. Hey, you're on Lunch Conversations with Randy and Teddy. Our special guest today is Robert Katz, the very first rocket scientist we've ever had on the show. The show is sponsored through 2022 by the Elder Law Firm out of Greensboro, North Carolina. Who's important to you and how you plan to honor your responsibilities to them. That's also important to the Elder Law Firm. So reach out to them if you need help or you want to have a conversation about, estate planning, elder law, elder care planning, or if you want help figuring out what those 7 documents are that I've been talking about for the last 6 months. Give them a call at 336-396-4551. Hunt them down on the internet at the Elder Law Firm. And remind them that today, Randy Wooden was stumped when I asked him if he remembers meeting Herbie the love bug. I had to come up with something.
It'll work.
Yeah.
Just something I hope to get to at some point here in the show, and that kind of deals with how we look at energy independence and how we protect our electric grids, and in this area we've had some what's the word for it? People coming in and shooting up stations and knocking out power. And so how can we be smarter about our electric grid and overall energy use, and how AI can play into maybe energy independence? So if we don't want to tackle that now, Teddy, that's fine. But I'd like to get
I can definitely talk about that.
In that and by the way, a whole sidebar statement. I'm really intrigued about this whole nuclear fission conversation that's going on, and they're saying it'll take decades for us to have those batteries. I want those damn batteries tomorrow.
There's a fusion, Teddy. Isn't it fusion? Is it fusion? It is like the sun. It does. Yeah. Very cool.
So that's the ultimate powerful conversation. So energy independent, you would think we prepped on this, but we didn't. But one of my focused areas in space that I worked on I started in the late 80s, I hate to admit. I'm proud to admit, actually, because it was part of the Star Wars program, part of the Strategic Defense Initiative to protect our nation from the Russian threat of intercontinental ballistic missiles, and rogue missiles from rogue states, and eventually brought down the Berlin Wall and brought down the Iron Curtain and gave freedom to hundreds of millions of people throughout the world in the Soviet Union. So I'm very, very proud of the work that I did and contributed to the space program. And what I was responsible for was protecting the spaceborne assets of the program, all of the interceptors, the sensors, and the whole network and the ground systems, protecting it from Russian incursion and spoofing and ensuring the data integrity and security, which we now call preventing hacking, and we now call it cybersecurity. We didn't actually call it that back then, but just like in many cases, the technology for national defense leads the technology that we in civilian use. GPS is another example, which we touched on. Cybersecurity as well, because those were the first systems needing protection. These were the first essentially wireless systems before we really had before the internet and before any wireless system terrestrial. So that was the spawning of cybersecurity. So that then did bring me to a lot of work in protecting our terrestrial assets. And one of the most important terrestrial assets is the electric power grid. So I have led a number of initiatives in protecting the power grid and using artificial intelligence to look at anomalies.
Yeah.
And to see any anomalous behavior down at the packet level within the network, and then to use that as alerting and then to segregating those threats. So AI is used to be able to thwart threats of hacking on the power grid. Now, not of shooting, that's a little different. I mean, you can, we do have models of people analysis, but of hacking, we definitely have been very aggressively using AI to look for anomaly detection within the very, very complex. Because again, similarly, as we talked about before, we have a lot of data points that have to be looked at. You have to look at the past, the present, and then try to pick the future, and then look at different patterns that relate to a variety of external factors as well. So we do use AI for protection of what we call the OT, the operational technology, rather than IT, the information technology. So there's two separate types of networks that AI is very aggressively used to protect.
Yeah.
Are there communicate with same thing with the Patriot Act after 9/11 and government not interacting closely enough and communicating enough with the private sector about security threats and so forth? And I'm wondering if the same issue exists here with our electric grid and our power. There are tons of private companies out there that are not government entities. Is there effective communication about potential threats, and how does that communication work in real time, and is it effective?
Yeah, so nothing relating to the Patriot Act. So that's people,
right?
And so this is 900 people. So companies that operate, electric companies that get licensed to operate in the United States, it's in their best interest as a business to not be hacked and to provide uninterrupted service to their customers. So they're driven by it's in their best interest to be up as long as possible. So yes, they have voluntarily created coalitions, PACs, fusion centers, integration centers, and cooperative agreements. FERC and NERC are so North American Electric Power Cooperative agreements to share information about threats and to aggregate that information, to fuse that information. So there's strong cooperation between all of the private entities. As you point out, 85% of the critical infrastructure in the United States is supply of all critical infrastructure, not just energy, all critical infrastructure is supplied by the private sector. And one of the most critical of that is power. Communications is the other two core ones underpin all of the others. There's 16 total, sometimes 17 when we add another election in there. So they very, very strongly and successfully work together. It's challenging because a lot of these private companies, they grew at different times with different technologies. Some of the technology is manual and old, and they're working on retrofitting, but there is a strong impetus, and they do work hard. We recently added some government executive orders and regulations, but they were ahead of those in working together voluntarily to share information. Actually it's information sharing centers that exist by sector. So there's one specifically for energy, and they make sure that they use that to look at the past, to feed AI algorithms to help them predict the future.
So because at the end of the day, artificial intelligence cannot be strong enough, intelligent enough to be able to serve our needs if it is not constantly fed one thing, data.
Right. Yeah. So data is the fuel, as you will, the energy, the oil that powers the algorithms, and then guided by learning that humans provide to then put context to that data, and also by what data you provide, then can create unfortunate biases. So we want to make sure that we're providing the full spectrum of data so that we don't create a bias in the result that the AI is recommending, suggesting. So, and that's one of that's if we look at the future, that's going to be one of the very critical new skills that's going to be needed for your listeners to be able to step up and take the opportunity to have all of the many new jobs that AI will bring in being able to look at data and the data analysis data. And we have data science as a new field now. As that becomes larger, we're looking how we curate and cultivate and collect appropriately data to be able to get the best outcome from the AI systems.
So that brings up this talking point that you and I chat about, is that for years, we collectively as a society said, oh my God, well, first of all, it was immigrants are taking our jobs. And then it became robots are taking our jobs. And by golly, robots are taking jobs, but robots have to be created. They have to be designed. They have to be managed. You know, they need to have their grease fittings greased. And I'm being a little facetious, but they can't just be there without somebody taking care of them. Well, here's this whole other thing that's going on, Robert. This whole other thing that's going on is AI is coming along. And by God, there's a new one. We won't dig into it deep. It's called ChatGPT. And ChatGPT is one of the first publicly known, maybe celebrated tools out there in artificial intelligence world that can not only write books for us, but it can also do math equations and report for us the work and show us the work product and how it got to that answer. And so my point is that artificial intelligence can start taking jobs of knowledge workers. But all of that is still predicated on somebody has to keep feeding, creating, and designing these AI tools. Talk a little bit about that whole transition, Robert. What you see going on?
Yeah. So so some of the bad news or good news, it really depends on where you are in the ecosystem, where your jobs are, and where you want to go. That we all know about the Industrial Revolution and how robots, if we will, I mean the steam engine and mechanization, industrialization took away jobs, and then how robots, more sophisticated robots later took away jobs. And that was sort of slow. You had to build these physical robots. You had to physically put them in the plant. They had to physically learn, and you got to build new plants in many cases to do that, or stop production to retrofit. And it took some time, and knowledge workers felt that they were safe. Right? I have a brain. And actually, just like it's somewhat easier to steal money electronically from a bank account than it is to physically go in and take cash, and you can take more. Now that we're knowledge workers, or everything is done electronically on your laptop, now that's becoming easier to replace. So they can be replaced much quicker. So the need to step up and to be able to then work alongside these robots or the AI systems in some of the jobs you mentioned in terms of data creation, data collection, deployment, maintenance, and in jobs mostly that we haven't even really imagined.
Yeah,
I wish I could predict the future. Movies such as both good and bad, 2001: Space Odyssey, for instance, and others can predict the future better than I, but will create jobs that we haven't even imagined exist. I mean, if you think about the cell phone, for instance, when we first started rolling out the cell phone in the late 80s or 90s, people were like, well, why do I need a cell phone? I mean, if someone calls me, first of all, they're not going to call me if they know I'm not home. And if it happened to, if I come home late, then I'll just get it on my answering machine when I get home. Like, well, do I need a cell phone? Like,
Randy still has one of those answering machines, I think.
Yeah, and the tape is still going around and around. What do I need that for? So,
yep.
And now, not only can we think we can't live without it, but we look at all of the industries and all of the technologies and all of the business that has been created based on that cell phone. If you look at all of the integrating that with, as I said, GPS, which GPS was never imagined to be a land-based system. That was, I worked on that at the Johns Hopkins Applied Physics Laboratories, primarily for over water, where you didn't have street signs. People say, well, if I'm on land, I got street signs. And the Defense Mapping Agency has a great map, so I knew anywhere I would be on a map, like what do I need GPS for? Now, I mean, it's craziness to think of now, but all of the industries, mobile location-based industries that came up. I mean, not just, you have Uber and Lyft and all the delivery services, but all of the various tracking and GPS-based services that use that new technology. We're going to have similarly these industries that we've never imagined, never thought of before. And then we start adding space into this, and we look at all of the commerce and mining and all of the opportunities that space will bring us. We can't even fathom. I mean, the sky is truly the limit.
Yeah, because we have no idea what will be the next thing that will create the next great wave of employment, the next great wave of ideation. Randy?
Well, yeah, you may or may not be familiar. There's a local company here in Winston called Inmar Intelligence. They are a lot of analytics, and I sat through a presentation by their head of data just a couple 3 years ago, and they were talking about the rapid increase in how much the volume of data that's accumulated. And so I guess my question, just like we get more cars on the road, you can only build so many roads and make them only so wide. At some point, is there the capacity? Do we have the internet bandwidth? Do we have the storage capacity to not only capture all this data, but to figure out what to do with it? Is there a capacity issue at some point? Do we butt up against that technology?
So again, you would think that we talked about this, but you're definitely, Randy, a lot smarter than you look, because that has been
thanks, I think.
That has been one of the biggest challenges, is being
well, there you go.
And we used to say, be careful what you wish for, because we have all this data. So we were so aggressive in data collection. And again, not to keep touting my space background, but that was the big problem we had in space. Is we had these huge sensors that would collect all this data. We had to get this data down to Earth, and then we had to figure out how to process it and get it out to the researchers. In many cases, the ground systems to distribute the data, we couldn't handle the data we were collecting in space. The problem was on the ground, not in space. So similarly, so this is why I talked about earlier that we have the hyperconvergence is what's allowing this renaissance in artificial intelligence, because many of the algorithms that we're using now, I'm proud to say, were ones that I worked on back in the 80s, and some of the technologies of neural networks and pruning and trimming and so are very we've tried and true. We've had those algorithms around for a long time, but we didn't have the systems physically to manage the data that we have now. So now with the explosion in cloud and computing and now quantum computing, we're able to collect the data. If you think about what YouTube does and how many billions of gigabytes of every second people are uploading into the cloud and how that's managed. So those are technologies such as quantum, technologies such as cloud have helped in that data assimilation, aggregation that then goes and necessarily feeds to perfect the algorithm and create the AI decision-making that we need. We're also having smarter hardware, more sophisticated hardware at the edge. So this is one of the new areas where we used to just have dumb sensors that sucked in all the data. But now there's so much data. I mean, you think about what your phone, a 20 gig pixels is unthinkable. But we have at the edge computing, you have hardware and software that can make sort of smart sensor decisions and do some initial triage on what data and decision making what data it needs to bring back. And it can use AI to do that as well on this time of day and different changes and things like that it would use to determine what data comes back. And that's a factor not just of the speed and the storage capability, but also what the communication link looks like as well.
One of the things that befuddles my feeble mind, Robert, is that
you're not as smart as you look, Teddy.
I get that. I get that. And
okay.
By the way, Robert, thank you for that quote. I'm gonna memorialize that quote. But
of course,
I can imagine that the people who are making the different types of storage appliances, which we used to call hard drives, and now we call them, what do you call it? SSI drives, circuitry. The people who are making that stuff have got to be making a ton of money because, I mean, every day, and this is the fact that's not real, every day Google orders another hard drive or 2 or 2,000 or 10,000, because all of that stuff has got to go into appliances that are not only robust, last a long time, fast, and as you say, close enough to the edge for us to get that data. It blows my mind. So
hey, something, Teddy, I'd like to work in. I know we only have just a few minutes left, but this show started, Robert. This show started in April of 2020 when everybody got sent home due to COVID, and it was all about job hunting, and that was what we did for a few weeks.
You started COVID. You started COVID just so you can.
Randy did.
I did. I ordered it takeout from down the road, but so. Before we get out of here, I want to get, if I can, a snippet on how AI is impacting the job hunt process and perhaps even the interview process. Are we going to, at some point, just be staring at a computer and that's going to hire us? Or where's AI in the job search mix and the recruiting?
Well, you won't even get to the interview unless the AI says you do. That's what, that's where it's going to,
I can't bribe AI. I can bribe Teddy, Robert, but I can't.
I read on, I can't remember the name of that website I read on, I think it's called The Onion. They said that they're not even going to let you apply for a job if AI says, Randy, don't apply.
Well, I'm surprised that's on The Onion because Onion is satire, but it's real.
No, I'm being a little satirical.
Yeah, no, it's absolutely real. I mean, because there's if we look at data, and again, there are privacy issues.
Right.
With the data that they collect, but there's so much publicly available data about people right now that we voluntarily, if we can look at adoption, like we used to be uneasy about people knowing what city we live in, but we're okay to post videos of where we are in real time as we're, this is our ham sandwich that we're eating. I don't eat ham, but if I were, this is the ham sandwich I'm eating in real time. And so if we look at how our adoption has changed and how easy now we are to adopt, but there's so much publicly available information and information that you may give in
freely,
be able to apply freely for that job. And it's going to look at predictors of success based on again, it can look at everybody in your company, or you can have a system that can anonymize looks at other companies across various industries of that particular job and what the predictors of success are. It will be able to, it would be a gatekeeper potentially.
And now our friend Todd Porter says from a local recruiter, he's not using AI to disqualify people specifically. But
So I mean, again, but it's a human decision whether to deploy it or not. So human can decide what to deploy, and also the humans might have the ability to adjust what sensitivity. So, you know, are we going to lean more towards education? We're going to lean more towards experience in a positive way. You know, when you have the some of the AI making a decision, it may take out some unconscious biases now, and that's a whole area that, you know, for another show. But sometimes people have biases in different ways, but it may actually increase the diversity that we get, which is very, very healthy, of course, for any workplace. When you take some of the human unconscious bias out, you know, in one way or another.
Yeah. By the way, do you know Todd Porter? Okay. He referred to, he had submitted you for a job 12 years ago. So maybe not. So you're muted.
Yeah, I've been unemployable since I left MIT and started my consulting practice in the early 90s.
I think he's just joking. I think he's just playing with
people sometimes put me in for you know, I've been a consultant advisor to corporations. So somebody's put me in for opportunities to consult for various clients of theirs.
Robert, we could go on forever because this touches on so much stuff, man. Well, we can't because Randy's, you know, he's on work release. He's got to get back to the office, you know. So Robert, one solid statement that you think we all need to understand, you know, one sentence statement we all need to understand about AI before we leave.
So AI really is going to be your partner, and is going to be able to bring out the best and free you up to be able to be creative as innovative as you can and want to be.
Got it. Yeah. So I love it. It's going to be your partner, but you got to want it. And I'm with you. So Randy, before I introduce our speaker for next week, again, Robert, thank you very much, my friend. Robert. This has been absolutely fun.
I'm not on next week again. It's not me.
I'm sorry. Now we have to mix it up. We can't always have the glamour special.
I agree. But it was a supreme pleasure. I can't tell you how much I appreciate. I've been a long-time listener, first-time caller to you guys. It's been amazing. God bless you for your work, your contribution to the body of knowledge, supporting an amazing community, which I'm now happy to be a part of.
Thank you, buddy. Thank you, buddy. And Dale thinks we've maxed out the bald man part, and that's not true, dude. I've still got some left here. So, look, Randy, you got a statement before I go?
Just kind of real quick. I think a lot of this is, you know, Teddy and I are baby boomers, and you know, I adapt to some things, but there are other things that, you know, you'll get it out of my cold dead hands. So I think it's a process, just like I remember my grandfather would refuse to fly in an airplane, and he would drive from New Jersey to Florida every winter and drive back. And so I think we need to keep in mind there's a human factor here too, when it comes to autonomous cars and that kind of a thing, to where not everybody's going to buy in on this thing initially. And so it's a process. And I guess I would just encourage people, same thing when it came to wearing masks and all this other crap we went through with COVID, is it's a big world and not everybody operates at the same pace and with the same motivation. I think there's some empathy that folks need to have as this stuff is rolled out, and some, it may take a while or maybe never for them to grasp it, but eventually it's coming. And just be kind to people who may not see things the way that you may see them. So that's the way in life in general, because it's a big world.
I'm with you, buddy. By the way, I now have a microwave, Randy.
Always be kind.
It's beautiful, Teddy. You know, I'm the whiz at a microwave. My oven, I have never used my oven. I have an oven here. I live alone, and my oven, it just is pristine as the day it was born. So,
I mean, of course you have a microwave. How else would you dry off your cat?
Now I have to flip that out, Robert.
We're not going to, the SPCA folks are going to, write letters to us. So, hey, Teddy, just real quick.
Who's next week?
Yeah, we're going to climb our personal Mount Everest. Rob, you ever a mountain climber? Anyway, Ben Eden is going to be on. I heard Ben speak a few months back. Going to talk about our own life, our own journey, and how we improve as humans, and how Everest represents a step forward, a step back, 2 steps forward, a step back, and incremental change to get to where your goals are. So we're going to work through that. Great guy. He's young enough to be your son. So he's not as handsome as you are, but with some time and grooming, he'll be there. So we'll give him that. Teddy, that's all for me. You got anything for the good of the order?
No, Robert, thanks for coming on, buddy. We'll say
so
hi
much.
another day. To our audience, we're grateful for all of you being here, and to the Elder Law Firm, we're grateful for them being our sponsor.
Yeah,
everybody have an absolutely fantastic evening, and we'll talk soon. Bye-bye.
All right. Thank you, Rob. Appreciate it.